Hey friend, Steve here. Most people chase wealth by trying to look rich, but the truly wealthy, you'd never know. Over the last decade, I've worked with thousands of high net worth professionals and business owners, and there are quiet patterns that I've seen almost all of them share. These are the 8 habits I've seen in wealthy people that almost no one talks about. Here's what they do differently. Habit number 1. Quietly wealthy people don't just invest money. I see them invest into their energy. Now, I used to hear this all the time, but I ignored it. The main reason why is because for the past 20 years, since I was 17 years old, I've always run and worked out. So my mentality was, I can eat whatever I want and I'll just burn it off. That's what I used to think, and I've always been able to stay in decent shape because of doing that. Earlier this year though, I got a health scare and it woke me up. So one of the things I did after that health scare is changed my eating habits. What I did was removed processed foods, I went gluten-free, cut out fried foods, and then the hardest part for me was cutting out sweets. 1 month from when I had the surgery for that health scare I had mentioned, what I noticed is that my energy levels were increasing. I started to feel mentally sharper, and I was a lot more productive at home and at work. So improving my diet had a compound effect. I was more focused, sharper with my thinking, and even more driven. Now, this was super important because when I had that health scare, after the surgery, I was away from the office for a little bit. So when I came back, we had to pick things up and try and reestablish momentum for a little bit. So coming back and feeling good, mentally sharper and having more energy went a long way. I'm not saying that you should just cut junk food out altogether. No. Start with whatever works for you. Here's what I do. For breakfast, I'll usually have a green drink. It's super light and it's not that appetizing, but it does help with my energy levels. That's why I do that. Then when I get into the office, I'll have a big 6-shot espresso, no milk, no sugar. I know that sounds nasty. I do add some hot water, so I make myself an Americano, and it really allows me to hit the day strong because I have a lot of energy after I have that drink. For lunch, I'll usually have a salad with grilled chicken, sometimes a little bit more if I'm really hungry. And then for dinner, I'll have more salad that Tara makes, and then she'll usually make a gluten-free pasta or rice with beef, chicken, or some type of fish. You don't have to do exactly what I do. Find something that works for you, whatever gives you the most energy in terms of your diet and nutrition, and then do that. And if it seems overwhelming, you can start with just one thing. All right, next, habit number 2. Quietly wealthy people don't ever gamble with their money by making emotional decisions. Instead, they investigate. What that means is emotions, no. Facts, yes. Very important here. And a lot of times we know this, but it's much easier said than done because as human beings, a lot of times we make emotional decisions. So I'll share a quick story on this about 2 very high net worth profile clients. I met with a couple who is worth more than 100 million. I think they're worth more than $200 million today. But when I initially met with them, they were looking at personal policies. They were very sharp. They did their research, but then they also brought in an independent third party who was their tax attorney. The tax attorney's role was analyzing what I put together and then also asking me a ton of questions to qualify me in that particular case. They and other high net worth families and individuals that I've met with over the years typically have someone else help them make a decision. And usually it is a disinterested third party to ensure that they make a fact-based decision and keep their emotions out of it. Factual due diligence builds trust, safety, and long-term returns. Here's what's helped me a lot with this over the years. Anytime I am making a major investment or big money decision, I like to know enough about that to be able to explain the pros and cons clearly to a friend. If I don't know the pros and cons, or I can't explain them clearly, that means I need to pause and do more research. For me, the only exception that I have in terms of my personal playbook when it comes to making investments or any big money decisions is if I am working with someone that I trust, or I get information from a trusted resource. I would do it based on that person and their reputation alone, because I know they've already done their due diligence. What I want to make sure of is that any decision I'm making is based on facts, because a lot of times I can get emotional and say, hey, it sounds great, let's jump in, and then find out it wasn't that great of a deal. All right, habit number 3, quietly wealthy individuals reduce stress by owing less. So this specifically has to do with debt. So debt is a no, a big no in that case. I will say that I don't think this is true for everyone. I see people online always talking about how they can leverage debt in a smart way. And I've seen what appear to be some very high net worth individuals who have leveraged a lot of debt. So it can work for some people. For me, it's not my preferred method, I will say that. There's a quote that I really like. It says, "The rich one rules the poor, and the borrower is a slave to the lender." Here's the thing. For most of my clients who have a net worth between $1 and $10 million, what I've noticed is that most of them have little to no debt at all. They often focus on paying off their debt first and then aggressively save or invest after that debt is cleared. And what I've noticed is, 1, they've got more cash flow once their debt is paid off, but they also have more mental freedom because they're not thinking about the debts that they have to pay. They don't have to give that any attention because it's gone. It's off of their plate. Most low debt individuals I know have more peace, focus, and usually more income because they aren't stretched thin. Here's what I would do personally. First, prioritize paying your debt before aggressively saving or investing a lot of money. Once you're out of debt, try to avoid taking on big debts. Car payments, particularly big ones, is a perfect example of that. If you're looking to get a nice car, you're looking at a big payment, and you can afford it, it is okay to have it. I wouldn't say, oh, you can't do that by any means. That's just how I often like to approach things. Personally, I like to keep the debt away. This way, I can just give more focus to the good stuff, the fun stuff, such as saving and investing. All right, habit number 4. Everyone has the same 24 hours in a day, but the quietly wealthy people actually own their own time. It's quite simple, has to do with prioritizing time. So, time equals number 1. This is the first thing that you're going to focus on. Personally, my schedule used to be a mess. What I used to do is come into the office, hit the ground running, go nonstop all day, and then at the end of the day, I didn't get all of these important projects done. I didn't get to start them because I was doing so many other things that I thought were important, but I wasn't making any real progress. Then I started blocking out time. What I do right now is Mondays and Tuesdays are completely blocked out for content creation, content ideas, and then working on projects from an operational standpoint. Then Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, I spend time in our other office with the sales team specifically. During those days, I have time blocked out for one-on-ones with each of the sales agents, role play in the morning, also meetings with the marketing team, and client meetings. The thing is, when we block out the time and truly stick to the calendar, things are typically way more productive. What I will say is a problem that I've always had and still have to this day is checking my phone constantly. For years, I would justify it and say, what if a big prospect texts me back? I want to get back to them fast. And yeah, it's important to get back to people quickly, but constantly checking my phone would distract me and then break my focus from the more important tasks that I was working on. So what I did is put the phones away, even put them on Do Not Disturb. This way, all of the distractions were gone. Here's what I would do to take control of your time. The first thing I would do is use a calendar. I've got time blocked out for content, client follow-up. Maybe it's service work. Could be strategy meetings. It could even be lunch. If you're struggling with time, the first thing I would do is organize it. And it's very, very simple to do. Next, I would separate myself from distractions that can pull me away from the things that are blocked out on my calendar. This helps me to truly focus on the most important tasks and get into a routine of doing them consistently. All right, habit number 5. Quietly wealthy people use clear communication to increase their net worth. You know that the number 1 fear most people have is not death, it's public speaking. And I totally get it because that used to be me and it still is in many ways. To be clear, I don't consider myself wealthy by any means, but I do try to copy this skill a lot, specifically practicing my presentation. I used to stink at public speaking. I was petrified of it. So the first public talk that I had was 30 minutes long. It was in front of probably somewhere between 70 and 100 people at the time. And before I delivered that 30-minute talk, I practiced it aloud somewhere between 10 and 20 times. I don't practice 10 to 20 times today. That was my first, so I practiced a lot. Over the years though, I have developed a regular cadence that I have found works very, very well for any time I'm going to give a presentation. What I like to do is practice aloud at least 4 to 6 times before delivering the live presentation. I found that when I do this at a minimum, it dramatically improves the engagement, client interest, and then ultimately the conversion rate. If I want people to work with me, how I view it is they have to know what I'm talking about. So what I work on is communicating my message clearly and improving the effectiveness of my delivery. When you think about some of the top people in sales, marketing, and business, they are often phenomenal presenters. Some of the best that I know of are business leaders, and they've grown their companies from ground zero all the way up. Do you think they just woke up and were naturally good at public speaking and sales? No. If you were to ask all of them, most would tell you that they practiced, and many times they practiced their presentation and their pitch in an obsessive, compulsive manner. So here's what I like to do whenever I am practicing to deliver a presentation aloud. The first thing I'll do is write it out. This could be on a Word document, on my whiteboard, or maybe it's a PowerPoint presentation. Second, practice aloud. This is the hard part that takes a lot of effort and discipline. Usually, if I'm practicing between 4 to 6 times, the first 2 practice sessions, I'm usually making a lot of adjustments to the presentation. And then the remaining 2 to 4 practice sessions, this is number 3, I'm working on refining my tone, cadence, and overall delivery of the presentation. Doing this can help with your confidence and also keeping the audience engaged. It's extremely effective. All right, habit number 6. Quietly wealthy individuals guard their mornings like their money. So let's call this one mornings. Let's just draw our little sun here, equals protect. You can tell I wasn't an art major in school. I know I'm at my best when I do the following. First, get to bed no later than 10 p.m. The first thing that I do when I wake up is listen to or read a chapter of the Bible. Then I'll go for a run and do some strength training. Then I'll clean up and have some time with Tara before I go into the office. Then when I get into the office, it's usually between 8 and 8:30 a.m., which is before most people get here, so I can knock out a lot of tasks without any distractions. So this habit over the years has really become a rock for me. It gave me a nice edge during the good times, but it's really helped me during the bad seasons. When things go south in business and cash flow gets tight, your stress levels usually go up. And if you're not getting enough sleep, that's gonna make everything worse. You don't need me or anyone to tell you that. So making sure that you are at full strength and can function at the highest level possible, especially during those down years, I think is so, so important. Here's what I would do personally. First, if you're sleep deprived and you find that that's slowing you down, I would prioritize sleep. I've tried getting up at a certain time, and I've also tried going to bed at a certain time. Personally, instead of setting an alarm for 6 a.m., if I just make it a goal to get in bed with my eyes closed by 10 p.m., doesn't always happen, but when I do that, I am just at my best the following day. If you prioritize sleep, you're probably going to have more energy, make better decisions, and be a stronger leader. That's all going to contribute to long-term wealth. All right, habit number 7. Quietly wealthy people measure progress by their own scoreboard, not anyone else's. So this one we will call do not compare. This is so important and happens way too much. The moment you stop comparing yourself to others is probably the time that you're going to begin to build real wealth. I remember hearing a quote from Jeff Bezos where he's talking about Amazon, and he said that here at Amazon, we have an obsessive, compulsive focus on the customer. But then when Jeff spoke with CEOs of other companies, he said that they would tell him they do the same thing, but he could tell that they were actually focusing on their competition. I remember years ago when my business was starting to grow at a faster pace, I was being criticized and attacked publicly by some of my peers and competition. They would do things like try to discredit the product or strategies we're using and all kinds of other crazy things. And I used to compare myself to them. I would look at their content and think, are they growing faster than me? What if my clients are looking at them? What if my clients are believing them? It was causing me all kinds of stress, and it wasn't good for the business, and we weren't moving the needle forward as a result. Also, when I think about that time in business, I wasn't having fun. I used to create response videos and try to refute what they say. I was fixated on comparing myself to them because I wanted to be better or whatever. I was in my own head. I got to a point where finally I said, you know what? Forget it. I'm not going to deal with them or that stuff anymore. I ignored what they were saying and put my focus 100% on our clients instead. The thing that helped me the most when I finally did that is I wasn't carrying that stress anymore. I had a lot more peace of mind, and guess what? The business grew. So here's what I would do if you feel like you can't stop comparing yourself to others. First, try to have an obsessive, compulsive focus on your customer, not your competition. Who cares what they're doing? Next, put your focus on strengthening your own business and your own relationships with your clients. That's probably going to put you in the best situation possible. Now, if you said, hey, I can't, or I just always find myself looking at my competition because they're saying all of these bad things about me, it's normal to have that reaction. Most, I think, human beings do have that. However, if you can't overcome that, you could try blocking the feed or putting their channels on do not recommend. If they're causing you to be distracted from what's going to help you moving forward, ask yourself, is it really worth looking at what they're doing? Is that going to help me significantly grow my business? Or would I give advice such as just focus on your clients and making your company better? If that's the case, try doing that. All right, finally, habit number 8, quietly wealthy people know integrity is the one investment that always compounds. So let's call this values and integrity. So I remember a few months after I partnered with a private equity firm, I found an error on our profit and loss statement. What happened was about $30,000 of property taxes for my real estate LLC was categorized as an expense under my main business. The private equity firm was not involved at all in my real estate business. So what this means is they were paying for an expense that they weren't responsible for, which is not fair at all. So fortunately, I found out before they did, which was really good. Let them know what happened right away and paid back the difference. The reason why is because personally, in my personal life and business, I do think that it's always important to treat others how you want to be treated. It's really your values and integrity that I would recommend never compromising. At times, I will say that doing the right thing might mean you're going to lose money. But if you do the wrong thing and compromise your values, that's probably going to hurt your reputation, and long term, that will lose you money. Pretend for a moment that you could hire one of the two following people. The first is unethical, lives a poor lifestyle, lies, treats people just absolutely poorly, and you're like, I would not want to be associated with that person. But then he has a track record of generating companies that he works for $5 million on the bottom line of additional profit in the first year alone. The second person is ethical, always does the right thing, and is concerned about the well-being of others before himself. He'd probably, at most, add another $200,000 of bottom line in the first year. Which one would you rather choose? For me, it's number 2. Yeah, number 1 might make me more money at first, but having someone like that in your company, I think, is just an absolute ticking time bomb where that's going to explode, hurt your reputation, and then everything is going to go south. It's not going to be worth the money. Whereas number 2 might start slow, but I know I can trust that person. And from a long-term perspective, they're probably going to crush it too. You see, the thing is, if you're trustworthy, people will see it. And in the long run, I think you'll always make more money. So here's what I would do. Your core values that make you, don't compromise them. For me, it's treating others how I want to be treated. Always being honest, never stealing, and in business, never using my knowledge to take advantage of a client to try to make more money. Because in the life insurance industry, frankly, that's simple to do, but it's not worth it. I feel like that would just come back to bite me at some point in time. So those are the 8 habits I see among clients who are quietly wealthy. If you liked this video, here's another one I think you'd enjoy.